Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, a Spotlight podcast. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
So I've hosted a number of shows highlighting IT firms who've helped business owners navigate their cybersecurity needs. And if you've listened to those, you've heard them say that really it's not a matter of if, but when you're going to fall victim to that. Today we'll be discussing what the insurance companies know and have to say, and what they can offer to business owners as well. So joining me here today is a commercial lines producer from Cedar River Insurance, Katie Krick.
Hello.
Welcome back, Katie.
Thanks for having me.
You know, I've had Katie on a couple of times.
Yeah.
If you look through the archives, and you'll remember that she's one of the 10 over 10, and I think you're about 2 years into that, and you're not disappointing. So I'm really excited to see.
That's a relief to hear.
Yeah, to see your work blossom and all the leadership things you're doing.
Thank you.
Nice work.
Thank you.
So, Katie, as I've mentioned in the intro, I'm trying to spread the word to business owners that taking cybersecurity as seriously as possible is really important. But the insurance companies do have something to contribute to this whole process, right? It's not all just defense, right? I mean, you need to protect yourself and all the things that are at risk with cybersecurity.
You
correct?
do. I'm so glad that you are also an evangelist for this, because I feel
Right.
like sometimes I'm beating a dead horse. But any expert will tell you, anyone who provides cybersecurity will tell you that a cyber insurance policy is really the last line of defense. It is. You really have to round out your whole portfolio and strategy, a cyber insurance policy, because no matter what amazing infrastructure is put in place for you, there's always a risk that it can be compromised.
Right. And I mean, are there any statistics? I know I'm kind of pinning you on this, but I mean, it's got to be just, I don't think it's going to happen to me. Right.
I think so. There's kind of a lot going on. So we have stats we can talk about, but because it's such an evolving market and an evolving product, it depends on who you ask. Right. So some just numbers to throw out kind of set the stage here. 25% of small businesses will experience an attack every single year.
Every year,
right?
Okay.
And of those, about 50% of them will close within 6 months following the cyber attack, because they just don't have the war chest to support the expenses. So we have already lost enough small businesses.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
The pandemic has kicked everyone's butt.
Yeah.
Right.
So this is, I feel like this is a problem that's almost on fire.
Right.
It is
Shout it from the mountaintops.
Huge. Yes. But they're a combination of a lot of things. So insurance as a concept goes back to ancient times. I think the first insurance, not document, but insurance records you can find are from 1750 BC. So this is, I know, right?
Really?
This is an ancient idea.
Holy crap.
And so I think that, we are familiar and comfortable with insurance as a concept, but not technology, right? Until the 90s, cyber insurance wasn't a thing. And even then, it was way different than it is now. So if you're asking about why it just isn't being adopted at the rate that you would adopt workers' compensation,
right.
The reasons are, I think, a lack of familiarity and general confusion, mistrust. Sort of the consumer's always worried that they're being upsold something.
Right. Yeah. Because again, if you're a small business or a large, any kind of business owner, the line items on your insurance policy are extensive, right? And if you're sitting there daunted by the overall premium, you're going to start looking at things that are not likely to happen, right? And so maybe this is one of the first things that gets cut.
I think that it's not being introduced like it should be. And
Okay.
the other, I don't want to call it a trap, but a false sense of security can happen in the following way. And so I do want to give this message out to the listeners there. Specialty cyber insurance companies are really the only providers that are doing, I would say, an adequate job of providing robust coverage.
Okay.
So it is totally possible to add an endorsement onto your general business portfolio. So if you're going to your general liability provider and you're asking for cyber liability insurance, often what you're getting is an endorsement. It's kind of cyber insurance light.
Okay.
It has much lower limits of coverage, and it has fewer coverages available. Whereas if you go to a specialty company, you will have a very extensive review process done.
Right.
And the policy you end up with is much more protective. But those specialty companies require different relationships with their agents, and they're just not as well known about. And so I think that lots of people think that they're protected because
they have a rider
they've had for 15 years, right, has their cyber policy, and they don't know what they're missing.
And this isn't to rank or call one better than the other. No, but you have what do you even call them? Single line
specialty carriers.
Right. But so Cedar River Insurance, who you represent.
Oh, we're independent agents.
You're an independent agent. So you insurance agents kind of fall into two different, probably more, but two general buckets for the layperson. You have the State Farms and the Allstates, and they write policies that are in the Allstate or State Farm, just to name two large ones.
Yep.
Yeah, they're called captive. Right. That's exactly the word I was looking for. So they write whatever Allstate and State Farm sell. Correct. Right. But an independent insurance agent can write a policy for up to, 20, 30, 50 different insurance carriers. Right.
Correct.
And so if I come to you and say, here are all of my needs, my overall insurance portfolio, as it were, could be made up of individual policies from different carriers.
Yes, it's much more flexible. Now, I've been a captive agent, and there are really good upsides to that, too. There's a benefit of being an absolute expert in what one company can offer. And in fact, other captive agents are one of my best referral sources for cyber insurance.
Okay.
So it's great to have partners all over the industry. I would never bash that. But
sure.
With specialty needs, with kind of niche products, an independent agent really can deliver you what you need to protect yourself.
Got it. Okay. So you mentioned that cyber insurance is kind of the last line of defense, right? So basically it is when the bad things happen and all the mess gets cleaned up or whatever, there's a claims process to help you financially recover from what you've lost when you've tried to get everything back that was taken from you.
Yes, there is. Now, cyber insurance, it is known that incidences get more expensive every single second that passes by. So unlike a typical fire, right, when you have the fire, the mitigation begins and then you start the claims process.
Yep.
Cyber insurance companies will typically deploy a response team immediately, as fast as they can. Because imagine, there's the lost business revenue is a covered loss. So cyber insurance companies know that the longer the business they're covering is down, the more expensive their loss is going to be. So they really come alongside and partner almost as a supportive IT firm for you. So it is I don't want to call it an emergency state, but they kind of live in yellow all of the time. Right. And the coverages would include things like lost business revenue because of an incident. Reputational harm is something that I think businesses really don't think about. But when your email server is compromised and your customers are sending money to the wrong place all of a sudden because a bad actor is impersonating you, you need a fixer, and the insurance company can pay for that.
Got it. Okay. So, I think we covered this, but the number one reason that people are not buying cyber insurance is because they think they're protected by the rider.
I think so.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that maybe it's also one of the first things to get chopped if I need to, I'm going to have this, so I need to have that.
Right. And the small business side, I think too, they often say, all I use is email. Like if you're a small business and you manage to make it through COVID and your only technology that you use is email, you really might think that doesn't apply to you. Like, what are they going to do? I don't keep my customer records in my computer. I don't need to sell anything through my computer. How important is it? But business email compromise is so damaging. It is so terrible. Can I give you an example of how this could happen?
Absolutely, yeah.
So imagine that all you use is email. That's it. You simply email. You email customers, you email suppliers, other experts, your friends. A bad actor could hack into your email and they will just sit and watch. They will just sit there and watch your inbox. They'll read your messages. They'll read what you send, what you receive, and they'll get to know your tone of voice, your writing style, your product and service that you offer, who your partners are, who your lawyer is, who your bank is. And then it becomes very easy to impersonate you in writing. And so what can happen is a bad actor will eventually bury an email folder. So they'll create a subfolder that you don't know about and they'll hide it. And then they can create a rule in your email system that will route all communication about one topic or to and from one person to the subfolder. So you aren't even aware of this, but your email is being used to elicit a transaction from a customer. And all of a sudden your customer sent you $50,000 for a part or some kind of thing like that, right? And then they say, well, where is it? And you say, I never got an order. What are you talking about? So email in and of itself, you need it to operate as a business, but it is really one of the riskiest areas, and it's an area that you have to have covered by your cyber insurance policy.
Holy wow.
I know.
Okay.
It's crazy.
Now, it seems like the ones that hit the headlines are the big box stuff, right? Where they hack into records and get credit card numbers and social security numbers, whether it's a big state government agency, whether it's Home Depot or Target or some of these places that have massive numbers of transactions, and somehow they get in there into the point of sale machine and gather all that kind of stuff. So, as a layperson in this world who hears the stories about cybercrime, you hear that, and then I also hear about kind of the ransomware. Hey, I'm you're a dentist or a doctor, or medical office or whatever, and I just shut you out of all of your medical records, and I'm gonna release them and bury you in HIPAA fines, or I don't know what that, but and we're not going to give them back to you unless you give me $600,000 worth of Bitcoin in this dark net kind of cyber world that I don't even live in. So is that where most of this is happening? Or you just mentioned the email thing, which is something that's so logical, but I never really had heard of.
And that would be called social engineering. So that is the human element that you just can't get rid of no matter how good your cybersecurity strategy is. Now, ransomware is a whole other topic, and it can get really interesting and nuanced. I recommend checking out, Insuring Cyber is a great podcast. The Insurance Journal, they have awesome resources.
This is a great podcast.
It is. It's better than any other podcast. Right. But the ethical conundrum of ransomware can be a whole other tangential conversation. Ransomware is basically, like you said, it's kidnapping your tech systems. Now, Double Jeopardy ransomware that you alluded to is kidnapping the systems, charging you money to unlock it, and then saying, if you don't pay us to unlock it, we'll begin to release it. So not only do you not have it, but everyone else does. That exposes you to privacy fines, regulatory fines, lawsuits. Right. So it becomes this explosion of problems.
And you talk about the credibility and,
Yes, correct. Yes. And then also, you are required to keep your customers' information private and secure. So even if you are a victim of a crime, as you've been hacked, it doesn't exempt you from having to deal with the federal government or the state government or your client's lawyers.
Got it.
I know, it's really depressing.
Okay, I'm scared to death.
I give bad news all the time, Chris.
Well, you got a solution. So let's talk about that solution. So, all right. So now you're the world is offering insurance policies to, again, if the worst happens, that you can maybe not go out of business and be able to, continue to operate. But I got to believe that there's some requirements ahead of time. You don't just buy the insurance policy and then live an exposed life. Is there some sort of requirement that they have some sort of accredited IT firm running their malware and firewalls and all the stuff that I don't know much about?
You're asking very informed questions for being a layperson.
Okay. Well, I mean, I've heard scary enough stories that I get a little bit of the lingo, but I mean, right. But there, and I've worked in a lot of small businesses that had the outsourced IT people, and it's like, 50% of it is to make sure that things work and you call us when things break down, help desk type stuff. But the other 50% of what you're paying them for is to do cybersecurity checks and have those kind of firewalls and all those kinds of things. But there's a lot of companies that decide that they're not going to spend that money on that invisible, quote unquote, support, and try to keep their bottom line healthy.
Right. So insurance works because we pool together risks, right? And we have this pool of money that we can pay claims out through.
Right. Okay.
Cyber insurance, like I alluded to before, is so new, developing, and needing to pay out so frequently that there almost isn't enough money to actually be solvent in the industry globally.
Okay.
So the only way that cyber insurance companies are able to continue to provide their product is by being extremely selective in who they allow to have coverage. That would be their eligibility requirements.
Okay.
So between 2020 and now, cyber insurance policy applications have almost tripled in length. So whereas before you would attest to, a decent number of questions, now, unless you have an IT specialist helping you fill out the application, you might not even understand what the questions are. And
you said it tripled in length. My ears heard it tripled in volume. Like, between 20 and 22, you've had 3 times the amount of people applying for it. But no, you're right. That's kind of your point.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure every listener pauses to hear what you actually said, that the actual application to even earn the right to buy a cyber insurance policy has tripled in length to make sure that they know that you've got your bases covered
Yeah, dude.
To minimize the likelihood that you're going to need the policy.
Long.
Yeah.
If I could give anybody a tip, it would be to start now. Because of the length of those policies, it usually, when you go through an application process, the insurance company will take it and they'll say, well, here's 3 or 4 things that we will not consider. Adjust this, fix this, increase this, prove us that you've done it to us, prove to us that you've done it, and then we'll talk. And so it really becomes this like kind of consultative experience where if you don't begin early, you won't get the policy that you need. I have another example that I want to share with you. And this is public entities and entities that are related to health records at all are much more difficult to get coverage for because they're much more likely to be attacked. And so we began the process of shopping for a cyber policy for a community mental health authority in a county across the state. And they wanted to have a competition to that endorsement I was telling you about. So they had a policy, they had an endorsement, they wanted to see what a standalone product would look like. We began the process 3 months before their incumbent policy renewed. Thank goodness we did, because it took every day, every minute of those 3 months to go back and forth. And they were working with a fantastic cybersecurity firm that actually was the referral source to me. So between all of the heads in the room, we were able to get them to a point where they were eligible for coverage. And then their incumbent policy non-renewed. Their company said, oh, this risk is too high for us. We can't keep you on even as an endorsement. And they were given only a 30-day notice, which is what's required by the state of Michigan. So if we hadn't started the process when we had, they would have gotten to their effective date with not only nothing. They wouldn't have had even the endorsement.
The new one's not ready and the endorsement fell off.
Correct. It is a longer process than most insurance policies are to buy.
Wow.
I know. I'm sorry to be the bearer of such bad news.
Got it. Okay. So, I mean, all right. So my head's spinning a little bit, but no,
gone
but that's
are the
all.
days where you have to, where a cyber insurance policy is something that only tech-focused businesses need.
Right.
It really needs to be as much a part of your strategy as anything else. It's so nuanced, maybe, or oversaid, but small businesses really can't afford to not have it.
Well, it seems like insurance agents need to do the best job that they can upon renewal time for anyone that they have a policy on.
I think that was really well phrased.
Right? I could have gone the dark side on that, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I to have this 15-minute conversation with you on the air, and we went down a couple of deep rabbit holes, but this conversation should happen at every renewal period with every business that has a policy with you or any other insurance agent to make sure that it's that strenuously delivered, and here are the ways that it can go. And
specific to cyber, yes. And also because the market's changing so fast that the product you buy this year, it might not be what's available next year. The renewals can change a lot. We're seeing, it's called a hard market, which means that coverage limits are shrinking. They're harder to buy, and then the cost is higher. So every single year, what's available to you, what your operations are have changed. And if you're going to review one policy out of your whole portfolio, cyber insurance really should be it.
Got it.
No.
All right. Now that we're all very scared to death, why don't you tell us how people can get in touch with you if they want to hear more? If they actually want to hear more or work towards a solution because now they understand how exposed and what the consequences could be.
Absolutely. I mean, I would encourage you to not take my word for it. And like I said, access some neutral resources like the Insurance Journal, Insuring Cyber Podcast. Also, cyber insurance companies have great resources out there too. So Node, CFC, Ascent, their coalition, there are a ton of companies out there that can teach you about cyber liability insurance. But in order to actually put those in place, you do need an agent like me. So I'm with Cedar River Insurance in Okemos, Michigan. We have a website, cedarriverins.com, a Facebook page, and I can be emailed at katie@cedarriverins.com.
Fantastic. We've been talking to commercial lines producer from Cedar River Insurance, Katie Krick. I really appreciate you coming in.
I'm glad you still think that. I'm sorry. It's so sad.
Well, these things scare the heck out of me when I hear about it, but I think it's so important with this audience in particular that they understand and keep getting hit over the head that how important this is.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thanks so much.
Thank you.